I know you are tired, but what if I told you that the very moment you feel most worn down is the exact moment history has often been made? Think about it. Fatigue is not just the body asking for rest. Sometimes it's life testing whether you're ready to step into the chapter you've been preparing for all along. We often imagine greatness happening when people are at their strongest, but in reality, the world's defining moments have often come from people who were exhausted, discouraged, and tempted to give up entirely. In 1940, during the early years of World War II, Winston Churchill faced one of the darkest hours Britain had ever known. The country was weary, cities bombed, resources scarce, morale fading. Churchill himself was not a young man. He was tired. The weight of an entire nation pressed on his shoulders. And yet, in that moment, when retreat seemed easier than resistance, he delivered a speech to Parliament that would echo through history. "We shall fight on the beaches. We shall never surrender." What made that moment powerful wasn't that he was full of boundless energy or optimism. It was that he stood up in the face of fatigue and uncertainty and spoke words that carried not just hope, but the will to endure. This is the paradox. Fatigue is not a sign you are failing. It's often the sign that you are in the very place where your actions will matter most. Like a runner approaching the final stretch, the burning in your legs is not a warning to stop, it's the signal that the finish line is near. Acknowledging genuine exhaustion begins with understanding that tiredness is not simply a matter of not having enough sleep or being lazy. It is often the cumulative weight of mental strain, emotional weariness, and physical demands pressing in from every angle. A person may feel fine one day and yet, over weeks or months of pushing forward without sufficient replenishment, find themselves in a place where even the smallest task feels overwhelming. This kind of fatigue is not something that can be dismissed with a cheerful, "just keep going," or a motivational slogan. It is a lived reality that shapes perception, mood, and energy. To truly acknowledge exhaustion is to meet it without judgment. Too often, in a culture obsessed with productivity, people feel guilt for feeling tired, as if weariness is proof of weakness. In truth, it is the opposite. Fatigue is evidence that you have been engaged in the work of living, meeting responsibilities, striving toward goals, enduring hardships, and giving your energy to something meaningful. It is the natural byproduct of sustained effort. Recognizing this removes the shame and creates space for compassion toward oneself. From a psychological perspective, ignoring or denying fatigue can be dangerous. Suppressing it can lead to burnout, where emotional detachment, irritability, and a sense of meaninglessness begin to take hold. That is why acknowledgement is the first step. It allows a person to honestly assess their state instead of pretending they are fine and pushing themselves into deeper depletion. By naming it, by saying, "Yes, I am tired," you open the door to understanding why and what can be done about it. Philosophically, there is also a deeper value in recognizing exhaustion. It strips away the illusion of infinite capacity and forces a confrontation with human limits. This confrontation can be humbling, but it can also be clarifying. When you are at the end of your energy, you begin to see clearly what truly matters, what deserves your remaining effort and what does not. In that sense, tiredness is not just a signal to stop. It can be a signal to focus, to cut away distractions, and to move deliberately. Acknowledging exhaustion is also a way of honoring your own humanity. It says, "I am not a machine. My body and mind have rhythms, needs, and thresholds." When this truth is embraced, it creates the possibility for sustainable progress rather than cycles of overexertion and collapse. Leaders throughout history have faced moments of deep weariness. Nelson Mandela after years in prison, or Marie Curie in the grueling pursuit of scientific discovery. And in each case, the recognition of limits did not diminish their achievements. It shaped their approach and gave depth to their perseverance. To acknowledge exhaustion, then, is not to surrender to it. It is to meet it with honesty, to understand its origins, and to use that understanding as the foundation for moving forward wisely. It is the pause before the next step, the breath before the final push, and the grounding reminder that tiredness is not the end of your story. It is simply the place where the next chapter begins. The hidden gift of tiredness is rarely obvious when you are in the middle of it. In the moment, fatigue feels like a barrier, a heavy weight pressing down on your will, slowing your pace, clouding your thoughts. But beneath that uncomfortable surface lies an unexpected clarity. When energy is abundant, it's easy to scatter yourself across countless tasks, to entertain distractions, to spend effort on things that don't truly matter. But when you are tired, you become selective. You stop wasting energy on trivialities because you simply don't have the capacity. In that way, tiredness acts as a filter, stripping away the unnecessary and leaving you face to face with what is truly important. From a psychological standpoint, fatigue forces the brain to shift into a mode of efficiency. Without the luxury of endless energy, you rely more on instinct, experience, and priority-based thinking. This can lead to moments of surprising productivity or insight because you are no longer bogged down by overthinking every detail. Instead, you do only what is essential, and in many cases, that's exactly what propels you forward. It's why some of the most meaningful breakthroughs happen late in the process, when energy is low but focus is sharp. There is also a philosophical dimension to this. Alan Watts often spoke about the way constraints give life its beauty. Music is defined not just by the notes that are played, but by the silences between them. Likewise, tiredness is a kind of constraint, a narrowing of resources that forces you to play only the most important notes in your life. This can make your actions more deliberate, your words more meaningful, and your time more valuable. History offers countless examples of people discovering their deepest strength in moments of exhaustion. Consider the mountaineer nearing the summit after days of climbing, lungs burning, muscles trembling. They no longer move for the sake of movement. Every step is intentional, driven by a vision that transcends comfort. Or think of writers who produce their most profound pages after hours of mental wrestling, not because they are fresh, but because tiredness has worn away the noise, leaving only raw truth on the page. The gift of tiredness, then, is that it exposes the authentic self. When all superficial motivations are stripped away, when there is no applause, no instant reward, no easy fuel left, you are left with the core of who you are and what you want. In that raw space, you make choices not out of convenience, but out of conviction. Fatigue forces you to confront whether your goal is worth the strain, and if it is, you find a deeper, more resilient kind of motivation, the kind that doesn't vanish when things get hard. In this way, tiredness can be the doorway to transformation. It can shift you from chasing many things shallowly to pursuing one thing deeply. It can help you cut through the noise of life and rediscover why you began your journey in the first place. And once you recognize that, exhaustion stops feeling like the end. It becomes the sign that you are closer than you think to something extraordinary. The turning point principle is the idea that the most pivotal moments in life often appear when you are closest to giving up. It is the point in a journey where you have already invested so much effort, yet the result still feels uncertain and the temptation to step away is at its strongest. In psychology, this is sometimes called the critical threshold. A stage where progress feels invisible, but internal change is building beneath the surface. Just like a seed that seems dormant before it finally breaks through the soil, our greatest shifts often occur in the moments when nothing appears to be happening. History is filled with stories of these turning points. In 1914, Ernest Shackleton's Antarctic expedition was trapped in ice, and months of relentless cold, dwindling supplies, and constant danger wore down every member of his crew. At their lowest points, starving, exhausted, and hopeless, Shackleton made the decision to risk everything on an 800-mile open boat journey to find rescue. That moment of choice, made under extreme fatigue and pressure, saved every man on the expedition. It was the turning point between despair and survival. From a philosophical lens, these moments are not random. They are the natural culmination of a process. Life often tests us most severely just before a breakthrough, not as a punishment, but as a refinement. It is in that crucible of difficulty that you are stripped of illusions and forced to operate with complete honesty about what matters to you. Alan Watts might say that we mistake these moments for obstacles, when in fact they are the heart of the journey, the part of the music that carries the most emotional weight before the resolution. The turning point principle is also grounded in the way human resilience works. Studies in performance psychology show that when individuals push through a perceived limit, whether in sports, creative work, or personal growth, the act of enduring beyond that point redefines what they believe is possible. Once you have crossed one wall, the next wall will never seem as tall. That redefinition of limits is the essence of transformation. What makes turning points so difficult to recognize in the moment is that they rarely arrive with fanfare. They often come disguised as another long night of failure, another rejection, another setback. It's only in hindsight that you can look back and say, that was the moment everything began to change. The choice you make at this stage, whether to stop or to take one more step, decides which side of the story you will live on. Understanding this principle changes how you meet your own moments of fatigue and doubt. Instead of interpreting them as the end, you begin to see them as signals that you are close to something meaningful. It encourages you to lean in when every instinct tells you to pull back. And when you do, you often find that what felt like the breaking point was, in reality, the moment you broke through. Strength beyond comfort is a form of resilience that emerges only when familiar supports are stripped away. When life is easy, it is tempting to believe we are strong simply because we are moving forward. But true strength is revealed when there is nothing cushioning us, no abundance of resources, no perfect conditions, no reassuring certainty about the future. It is in those moments, when comfort is no longer present, that we discover whether our commitment is shallow or deeply rooted. From a psychological perspective, comfort zones serve as both a place of recovery and a trap. They protect us from stress, but they can also prevent growth if we never step beyond them. When we are forced out, by circumstances, ambition, or necessity, we tap into adaptive systems within the brain and body that lie dormant in periods of ease. Neurologically, the absence of comfort triggers problem-solving regions of the brain to become more active, forcing creativity and resourcefulness. The mind begins to look for new paths, new tools, new approaches, often leading to breakthroughs that comfort would never have demanded. History provides clear examples of strength being born from discomfort. During the Great Depression, countless individuals lost homes, jobs, and security. It was a time of scarcity, yet it was also a period that forged some of the most resilient generations in modern history. People learned to improvise, repair, reuse, and work together in ways that prosperity would not have required. That shared hardship not only built individual strength but also deepened collective bonds. Philosophically, discomfort serves as the forge where character is tempered. Alan Watts often spoke of how life's beauty lies in its contrasts. The sweetness of life is sharpened by the bitterness we endure. In the same way, strength gains its depth from the struggles we survive. Comfort can produce skill, but discomfort produces grit, and grit is what carries us through when skill alone is not enough. This is not to say that comfort is the enemy. It has its place. Rest is necessary, recovery is vital, but if comfort becomes the only state we pursue, we risk atrophy. Muscles that are never challenged grow weak. Minds that are never tested grow complacent. It is the willingness to endure moments of uncertainty, strain, and even fear that allows us to see just how much we are capable of. Strength beyond comfort also has a lasting effect. It redefines what you perceive as hard. Once you have endured hunger, loneliness, or uncertainty and continued forward, the next challenge will seem more manageable. This creates a compounding resilience. Each time you step beyond comfort and survive, you become harder to break. And in that, you gain not only the ability to endure life's difficulties, but also the confidence to seek greater heights, knowing you have what it takes to stand when the ground beneath you is anything but soft. Life as music, not a destination, shifts the way we perceive challenges and progress. When we think of life solely as a linear journey toward a fixed endpoint, we tend to measure its value by milestones achieved and goals completed. In that frame, setbacks and fatigue feel like detours or delays, something that pushes us farther from where we want to be. But if we see life as music, as Alan Watts suggested, every note, every rise and fall, every pause and crescendo, is part of the composition. Fatigue, then, is not an interruption to be resented. It is a necessary part of the rhythm that gives meaning to the performance. In music, there are moments of tension before resolution. The tension is not a flaw, it's what makes the resolution powerful. Similarly, in life, the seasons of struggle, weariness, and uncertainty create the emotional depth that makes moments of triumph so profound. Without the minor keys, the joyful refrains would lose their contrast and intensity. When we frame our lives in this way, tiredness is not a sign of failure, but a sign that we are in the middle of the piece, playing through a section that demands focus and endurance. From a psychological standpoint, this perspective has practical benefits. When people view challenges as part of a process rather than as an obstacle to an end goal, they experience less frustration and more resilience. This mindset fosters what researchers call process orientation, valuing the act of doing itself rather than constantly chasing the moment of completion. Athletes who enjoy the training as much as the competition, musicians who love the practice as much as the performance, and writers who find meaning in the act of writing rather than just publishing, all embody this musical way of living. History shows that those who embraced life as music often left the most lasting impact. Beethoven composed some of his most celebrated works while deaf, unable to hear the music in the way others did. Yet he was immersed in the act of creating, moving note by note, bar by bar, not knowing exactly how the final performance would resonate. His persistence was not fueled solely by the desire for a finished product, but by the necessity to keep playing, to keep expressing. Seeing life as music also helps us navigate fatigue with grace. A musician doesn't stop in the middle of a demanding passage because it's difficult. They keep playing because the piece would be incomplete without it. Likewise, when we hit difficult stretches in life, the goal is not to eliminate them, but to play them well, to bring as much intention and presence as we can, knowing they contribute to the richness of the whole composition. Ultimately, this view frees us from obsessing over the finish line. It invites us to experience each moment fully, even when we are weary, because the value of the music is not in how quickly it ends, but in how deeply it is played. And in that sense, tiredness becomes part of the art itself. Action despite fatigue is one of the most defining traits of resilience. It is the decision to move forward even when your body aches, your mind protests, and your emotions are pulling you toward retreat. This is not about recklessness or ignoring genuine needs for rest. It is about recognizing that there are moments when waiting to feel ready means you will never act at all. Fatigue can be both a warning and a test. If it is telling you to care for yourself, you must listen. But if it is simply the natural resistance that comes when you approach something difficult, then moving through it becomes the key to growth. From a psychological perspective, this act of pushing forward despite low energy can rewire the mind's relationship to discomfort. The brain tends to associate tiredness with stopping, so each time you continue in a state of fatigue, you challenge that link. Over time, this builds what psychologists call psychological stamina, the ability to endure emotional and mental strain without immediate withdrawal. Just as athletes develop physical endurance by training under strain, individuals build mental endurance by taking action when it would be easier not to. History offers powerful examples of this. Think of Florence Nightingale during the Crimean War, working long nights tending to wounded soldiers under conditions of disease, poor sanitation, and relentless exhaustion. Had she waited for rest before returning to her duties, lives would have been lost. Her ability to act through fatigue did not come from superhuman energy. It came from a commitment to her mission that outweighed her comfort. Philosophically, Alan Watts might frame this as the difference between living reactively and living intentionally. If we only act when circumstances feel ideal, we are living reactively, allowing external conditions to dictate our pace. Acting through fatigue is an assertion of intention. It says, I am not here merely to be carried by the current. I will swim when I must. Fatigue may slow you, but it does not have to stop you. There is also a hidden benefit to taking action when tired. You often discover you are capable of more than you thought. Many people overestimate the point at which they cannot go on. By moving forward anyway, you expand that perceived limit. This has a compounding effect. Each time you prove to yourself that you can still act despite fatigue, your belief in your own resilience grows. Of course, this does not mean pushing endlessly without pause. Sustainable progress requires balancing effort with recovery. But the critical point is knowing when tiredness is a true signal to rest, and when it is simply the friction of growth. The former preserves you, the latter transforms you. Acting in the latter moments builds a kind of strength that no amount of comfort could ever give. In the end, action despite fatigue becomes part of your identity. It's the quiet knowledge that even when the weight is heavy, you will take the next step. And often, it's that one more step, the one you almost didn't take, that changes everything. The heart of this entire speech rests on one unshakable truth. Tiredness is not the enemy. It is the signal that you are standing at the edge of transformation. Every stage we explored, from acknowledging your exhaustion to recognizing the hidden clarity it brings, from understanding the turning point principle to discovering strength beyond comfort, from viewing life as music to taking decisive action despite fatigue, points to the same reality. Fatigue is often the threshold between who you have been and who you are becoming. When you accept tiredness instead of resisting it, you strip away guilt and shame. You see it for what it is, the evidence that you have been engaged in the work of living, striving, and building something meaningful. You begin to understand that it filters out the unnecessary and focuses you on what matters most. At your lowest energy, you often find your clearest priorities. You also learn that these moments of weariness are often your turning points, the places where the choice to stop or move forward determines the story you will tell later. History reminds us that the most remarkable victories often rose out of the heaviest seasons of struggle. These moments are not interruptions, they are part of the essential music of your life. The pauses, the minor keys, and the demanding passages all give shape to your journey. And perhaps most importantly, when you choose action despite fatigue, not recklessly, but with purpose, you prove to yourself that you are capable of more than you imagined. You break the mental link between tiredness and stopping. You expand your sense of what is possible. You build the strength that comfort will never offer. So the conclusion is clear. This moment, the one where you feel worn thin, is not the end. It is the part of the music where the note you play next will echo the loudest. This is your moment, not because you feel ready, but because you are here, standing at the very point where most turn back. And when you choose to move forward anyway, you step into the version of yourself that was waiting on the other side of this fatigue. You are tired, yes, but you are also prepared. You have the tools, the resilience, and the courage to carry this note to its fullest sound. And when you do, you will look back and realize that this was not the breaking point. It was the breakthrough.